Insurance is entering a quiet but significant shift. A simple vibration on a phone, someone I know well said, a silent ping, captures how claims are moving from slow reactive processes to something potentially more immediate, embedded, and largely invisible. Yet beneath that convenience are some deeper questions. Can insurers truly reach a point where claims are notified, assessed, and settled before a customer even asks? And is this something that people want? Where's the balance between automation that builds trust and automation that undermines it? And I have an example of one about that. In Asia, from India's digital public infrastructure to Southeast Asia's rising digital ecosystems, is Asia becoming the model for real-time embedded insurance? To explore this, we are joined by two of our friends, Julien, Condamines, co-founder and chief revenue officer at Novo AI, and Shwetank, Verma, co-founder and general partner at Leo Capital. How are you two doing today?
Amazingly, thank you. Happy to be back.
Great, Michael. Thanks for having me back.
It's great to have both of you here. So, Julien, I referenced this term that you have, this silent ping on your phone. I think you remember writing this because I remember commenting on it when you posted it. And you said, like, this is not just a technological thing, but maybe a psychological thing about trust and the customer's expectation of immediacy. Can we just start by digging deeper into that, and then we'll see where it takes us?
Sure. So we're talking about the trust or lack thereof that the people have in their insurance, right? So I haven't been in the insurance industry for that long, but back in the days, like the first few days that I worked with, we did a markets research, and I interviewed dozens of execs on all sides of the insurance industry, right? So brokers, claim managers inside, or HR people inside the organization doing captive, insurers, kind of like a bunch of representatives. And the one thing that didn't come out was the most interesting one. And so eventually what we came up with was that people love to hate the insurers. And there is absolutely no trust because there's no differentiation. And everyone is talking about, oh, we do everything for our clients, and that's why we're different. But if everyone's saying the same without actually putting words on that, that kind of like, and so the trust has been eroding over time. And today, for a lot of people, insurance is a necessary evil. It's something that they need, but they don't like to have. It's something that they never want to have a contact with. And that's something that they see as like the payers that don't pay. And I don't think that's actually true. I think that's a big perception, and that's a lot of insurers are actually doing a good thing. So that's not necessarily my opinion of the industry, but that's the real perception that most of the people I've talked to have of their insurance.
Do you want to talk about? So sorry, Shwetank, go ahead.
No, I have to sort of really agree with Julien that claims is the moment of truth for insurers. That's the moment that matters. It's ultimately you're purchasing a promise to be made whole when a peril strikes. Sorry to use very technical insurance language, but for too many, and especially in Asia, the process of claiming is just very painful. And I lived through this just now as a customer myself. I've been traveling, as you know, Michael, and I have a young baby, and we put in a travel insurance claim for he had to go to the doctor. Yeah, he's okay now, touch wood. And it was like, oh, the doctor has signed it, but she hasn't stamped it. Hence, your claim is denied. And this is the kind of things that my wife was pulling my leg, like, aren't you supposed to be like this insurance guy who's is talking about claims is all AI, etc., and this damn insurance asking for a stamp. And we went back to the clinic and said, can you stamp it? And they're like, what the hell is a stamp? We have no idea what a stamp is. Like, it's not something that we do. So there's a very long way to go before the hype of what people talk about in claims and the reality of claims matches up. I mean, my claims form for this thing was 12 pages. 12 pages. I scanned it in a way to just say, okay, this is the reality of claims at the moment for a simple doctor's visit. I mean, the kid had 104 degrees fever. That's Fahrenheit.
What country was that, Shwetank?
Where did I take him to the doctor?
Yeah. What country?
No, the doctor visit was in Finland, and the insurer is in India. It's a travel insurance product.
I got it. In Finland.
Yeah, we were in Finland, and I mean, the experience with the doctor was perfectly fine. Let's be clear. That was not an issue.
For sure.
The issue was getting the event took place in June. We were negotiating the claim till October, and then finally something got paid in November. Like we just said, okay, you just pay whatever you feel like. I was negotiating it just out of point of principle. It's just like I need to now see how painful it is to get to the finish line on this.
I want to make a point as well. Like you guys know, I've done like hundreds and hundreds of recordings in the insurance space. I have one of the biggest insurtech podcasts in the world, right? And one of the things that Julien said really stuck with me, and that is that the perception of the way people inside the insurance industry behave and the reality, to me, because I've spoken to so many of them, at least on balance, I would say they care a lot about making sure that things are right and that claims get paid. And it's interesting to me when I hear this thing of like, we started in June, we negotiated into October. I'm super curious, and I didn't expect to talk about this, but if you don't mind, you don't have to give all the details, right? Because it's not really my business, but like, what is this negotiation process? Who are we negotiating with, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're negotiating with the claims handler, I guess, the customer support person. So the negotiation was just that look, they don't stamp, they've signed, what more do you need? It was on email, and then a couple of phone calls to just sort of say, hey, so I mean, the way it worked here was you'd send the document over email and you'd be met with complete silence, nothing. Then, then you'd call the claims hotline, 2 weeks later and say, hey, what's happening? And they're like, oh yeah, you sent an email 2 weeks ago. Let us take a look at that and get back to you. So this just ping-ponged for a while, and ultimately they said because there's no stamp, we can only settle for like 50% of the amount or something. Like fine, it's okay. Just at this point, just close it out.
Right. At this point, it's just a like you said.
And look, the amount wasn't meaningful enough to get. If this had been a hospitalization and the amount was like a few $100,000, it'd be very different conversation, right? And a much more stressful one. This was like a 1,000 odd euros. That's okay. We can live with
But
it.
you raise a good point as well here, Shwetank, which is something we see a lot, right? So you talked about the moment of truth where you actually, the first time you interact with your insurance after paying a bill. So you're basically buying a product you don't want to buy. And you're spending money on something that you hope you'll never use. So it's a frustrating experience in the first place by essence, right? But it can get better when you eventually need it. The experience is delightful. But then the first time you actually interact with your insurance, when it happens, it's awful. It's awful because you didn't get paid, and more often than not, especially when we talk about medical insurance, but also if you're talking about motors, if you're talking about travel, it's a moment where you're vulnerable, where you're in need of support and guidance, where potentially you're in a country where you don't speak the language, where you don't know the customs, where you don't like all of this is highly disorientating. And the person that you hope will help you because you actually paid them for that is completely in a different ecosystem, which is in front of a computer looking at a set of rules and saying like, oh yeah, that doesn't check my box. And there is such a disconnect between the experience that the claim handler has in their office. And by the way, the experience is awful as well. And the person having that challenge somewhere in the world in some situation. But
I agree, Julian. I mean, my wife was convinced that there was mendacity and ill will, but I was like, no, it's just a rule. There's a rule that the stamp is requires to be stamped, and they have no way to go around this rule.
Right,
They have not figured out that in half the world they don't stamp this stuff. So
and that's the reason why, to your point, Michael, why the claim experience is still not great. It's because the disconnect with the person actually handling their claim and the person managing the operations and the person holding the budget so that transformation will happen in the organization. And so that's why as well it takes so much time. The person that's handling their claim, the job is to follow a clear set of rules, not to actually question the process, not to actually take your side, try and understand your situation, all that. All right, your claim will be paid, your claim will not be paid because of this. And then in order for that to escalate to the people actually taking care of the operation, all that, who have completely different KPIs and don't really interact with the people on a day-to-day basis, it's again a completely different world where it doesn't really match. And that person over there is also in charge of reducing the costs, controlling the payouts, making sure that there's not too much fraud and abuse and waste, and that the insurance actually has a financially sound operation. And so you can see how those disconnects lead to more often than not an experience that's not so great.
Do you think that, and this is maybe a radical thing to say, but I'm sure other people have thought about this, but do you think maybe in the insurance industry that the person that sells you the insurance should also be in charge of your claim? Like they should be the claims person? Do you know what I mean? Because they're the one that sold you the product. It's like buying a car and going to the car dealership, and the guy you bought the car from goes, I don't know, we can't fix this thing here.
You know, it's the old farmers versus hunters thing, Michael. The guy selling you the insurance is the hunter. The guy making the claim is the farmer. The two don't sit together. It never works. Theoretically, you're right, but practically never works.
I think it's kind of the role the brokers play, in a way, and at least for group insurance and those guys actually selling the claim, then they also your account managers, and they will be the one escalating and making the dispute and with the insurers, but that only happens if you are a large account and you're spending a crazy amount of money with them.
I think the opportunity to rethink how claims are done is really live right now. This 12-page form for this travel insurance, in my opinion, can be brought down to 2 photos and a real-time check-in. If you see that my mobile phone is checked in at the hospital, I've taken a photo of the consultation with the doctor. Honestly, you don't need everything else. You don't need because you're paying for the simple act of the consultation and the test. So maybe at best you need the test results, but you don't need 12 pages of information. You definitely don't need the doctor to be providing, all their details as well, like where they went to school to, more or less, that kind of level of detail. The thing is that insurance is an old industry, so these claims processes are all set in the analog world with a focus on fraud prevention. And we haven't rethought how we can get the same level of fidelity with completely different data from a digital world.
Which, funnily enough, will also improve a lot the way you detect fraud and abuse and waste.
It's much harder to do fraud if you do it this way. I mean, honestly, the analog world is actually easier to defraud than if you were using purely digital first approach.
So what does automation in this space look like, Julien? Seriously, like if we're automating a claim, just run me through this process. What should have Shwetank's experience been like? And should it be any different in Finland than it is in Singapore, to be fair? Nothing against Finland, but I'm just saying that was the example that we have, right?
Yeah. Well, in this case, that was India. That's where the claim was.
Sorry, but
right?
So 2 countries involved, right?
Yeah. I think there's what it looks like now, what insurers are ready to integrate today, and what it could look like in the future.
So can you go through those 3 things for me?
Yeah, sure. So today, most claims are still they still live in PDFs, and there's call centers, and so they have a stack of paper that they have to capture manually, whether it's the insurers or the third-party administrator. A lot of it's still captured manually, so you have people actually taking notes of those claims. Some of them, in a lot of countries, they still send in papers. We've talked to clients that still have like stacks of papers on their desk, and they capture that manually. And so you can imagine the amount of errors that goes into the capture, but also because they're under pressure of turnaround time, they have to capture only the necessary information. So very little data is captured with a lot of errors. And then your claim is filed into a core system, which dates from the 90s in the best case, on horrible interfaces. By the way, that's a very tedious job to do for the people there. And then when it escalates, someone else will look at it. So claim handler to look at whether everything is covered, and more often than not, that's still a different team that will look into a medical necessity, whether like the treatment plan that was applied to Shwetank's kid was correct or not. And then that will be sent for payout. So you have a few steps before it gets paid. When it's a small claim, a lot of it is now like straight through, in the sense like there might be a bit of automation. Where it looks different from, I'd say, for lack of a better word, developed countries to more emerging market, is that developed countries have more computerized claims. So a lot of it's computerized, and at least it goes much faster to capture it. And so automation can happen to an extent. And a lot of it has been standardized, for instance, in the US and Europe, which is not all the case in Asia, where the same provider doesn't send you the same claim twice. We're not even talking about cross-country collaboration, not even within the country. Within the same provider, you never have the same claim twice. And so they all of them, like whenever you have an intervention at the hospital that is slightly complex. There will be at least 8 pages, and it can go to 150 pages. That's what it looks like. No. So the form will be 1 to many pages, but then the claim itself that will be captured. So the form is only one document that will go into the claim. And then you'll have medical certificates, you'll have reports from lab exams, you'll have doctor's notes in handwritten formats, you'll have stamps that needs to be captured because of the date they contain. You'll have mixed languages a lot of time in Asia. What else? You'll have identity documents, you'll have invoices, sometimes you'll have as well a price list or like a detailed list of the medication. So that adds up very quickly, and they're all in different formats.
Wow. So that's what you said about the format is now, but like, what are insurers ready to do? Because I think that's an interesting question.
What they're dreaming of, and a shameless plug, but that's what we do at Novaware, is capturing all those documents automatically, which, because of the messiness of the data in Asia, couldn't be done as well as it's been done already in the US and Europe. But so capturing the data and orchestrating them is already saving them like 90% of the time to process the claim. And then the second part is how do you flag inconsistencies on those claims, right? So is everything like, can you check for medical necessity? Can you check for fraud? Can you check for tampering the documents? Can you check whether all the documents are there? So all of those can be done automatically as well. And so that they're kind of ready to do it with human in the loop and making sure that someone verifies that everything is fine, especially for the high claims, that they're actually kind of ready to do it, whether it's internally or externally. And then the future is like, why the hell do you need a claims form in the first place? No, but that's true. Like I've had a discussion not so long ago with an insurer. I won't say their name, but where they were telling me like, oh, our Q4 project is to put the claim form online so that people can download it and fill it online. I was like, wait, what? They had just basically discovered what a Google form is, right? And so when I told them like, well, actually, you don't even need a claims form anymore. Like you take Shwetank's documents and you capture all the information that's on there, and you already have your claim form captured for you with no mistakes, with no error. It's taking 10 seconds to Shwetank to just verify that all the information is there. Maybe you'll have to add his date of birth or some missing information that wasn't in those documents. And the entire claim submission happens in 30 seconds. And that happens for very simple claims. If you go to your GP, that's like companies have that. For instance, today, Allianz Care has that on their portal, and a lot of other companies. But as soon as it goes into complex claims, it's a mess.
Claims have really improved within geographies, right? So like my claim experience within India has been pretty okay. Claims experience within Singapore has been quite okay. But cross-border claims remain an absolute mess. And within country as well, I think the friction remains unnecessarily high. It can be brought down even further, but at least it is. If I think about like where we started 10 years ago, it's improved a lot.
But if I may, it's improved a lot on the front end. The interface that you need to use to submit your claim has improved a little bit. The funny thing is like it's really hiding the mess behind it. So what happens once you click that submit button, and the reason why it's taking so much time, it's because it's super chaotic behind it and still super, super manual.
But how hard do you think it is for them to change these systems from the 1990s? And I'll tell you why I'm asking. Again, when I was at Goldman Sachs, right, we had a position system and a trading system, and we upgraded the entire thing. But if you could imagine, like, if your positions are wrong and you're trading, like everything is wrong. It doesn't matter. You could lose money, make money. It doesn't matter. Everything's wrong. And upgrading that position system was one of the scariest things we ever did, because again, if you miss something, it was going to be really, really hard to recover. And again, those systems were built in the 90s as well. Some of them, frankly, in the 80s. We did it successfully, but it was harrowing to go through. How hard is it? Is it the same thing from an insurance perspective for the insurers to say, we've had these systems since the 90s, but technology has advanced so much in the ensuing 25 or 30 years, we need to upgrade this stuff. Are they willing to do that as well?
So that's the beauty of the Gen AI era. And I don't want to feed the hype, but what Gen AI is really, really good at is thriving with messy and structured data and making sense of it. And the other thing where LLMs have done a huge improvement is understanding the context. So basically today you have a technology that doesn't actually need your data to be clean, not even treated before, and that can do that with even all legacy systems. We work with some clients that don't even have an API in-house. That we deal with clients that just send us like stack of PDF with 100 pages and there's like 20 claims in them. So you can actually do the split yourself, capture the information, orchestrate and all that. It's actually super easy. And so that's where I think the industry will get like a leap in the digital transformation. That it's one of the industry that's taken the longest to digitize. And all of a sudden there's a technology that helped them to do that. So it won't do everything. It's not magic, but there's a few elements that have been like making the industry lag behind that really will be solved in an amazing way. So I think it's like that's where it's slightly different. You don't have to overhaul the entire system. Of course, it would be better to have like modern system that can work seamlessly and all that. But you can actually start by having a clean data ingestion and then continue to feed the same core system without having to change them and already get much better results.
It's not as critical as trading. Trading is every day, every second. Getting that wrong is catastrophic. You can definitely build a claims system, rip out your old one, and have more checks and balances for the first 3 months if you want. It's not that hard. It's just that the will to do it typically requires some crisis point. Otherwise, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, can I just say something? Then I'll let you finish. I was having a conversation with somebody else, and I was remembering this comedian in the '90s. So it was a while ago, and I remember who it was, but I'm not going to say. But I remember this comedian in the '90s saying, "If you tell me a CD player is the last music device that's ever going to be invented, I'll buy one. But otherwise, I'm just going to wait until the next good one comes out." And I feel like sometimes. Yeah, like I'm going to wait for an MP3 player, but is there more than that? Is it just going to be magic and in my ears or something like that? But I feel like these big monolithic systems that sit inside some of these big companies, that the companies are doing the same thing at some level. They're like, wait a second, we'll replace it, but we'll replace it when we feel like this is going to be the best replacement we've ever done, and this is going to last us for another 30 years, right? Because again, the CD player lasted for 6 years until the MP3s came out. And then I feel like that's part of it. Sorry, Julien, what were you going to say?
No, that's actually exactly where I was headed. Is that the technical part is only a part of the problem. It's 50% of the solution. The other part is it's common place, but it's digital transformation. It's change management. Is how do you convince the organization to actually change? And the way organizations are built, like innovation is career suicide in corporate more often than not. You do a project that doesn't have a short-term ROI, you're killing your next promotion. The split of responsibilities, is it really my job to do that? Do I really want to have open that Pandora box where, those systems, when we change them, some stuff are going to break. If my name is on that, gosh, do I want that? And that's going to be a lot of work. And so I'm not throwing the blame at insurance saying like, oh, they're all lazy and all that. No, but it's the
same everywhere, to be fair.
It takes goodwill from so many stakeholders that are involved and will be impacted by that change, that aligning them takes a very, very long time. And they're scared. They're scared because if it breaks, eventually they'll take the blame, and that's going to be very, very bad for the career. So today, it's clunky, but it kind of works. So why would you change it? And I think what's going to make them change is when a few bolder ones or maybe new kids on the blocks are going to come with much more efficient processes and they're going to be overly competitive compared to them, then that's when the less early adopters will actually move on. And you already see them. You have like companies that have started to make the move, right? If you look at AIG CEO has been, like on calls with the CEO of Anthropic and CEO of Palantir and kind of like making big announcements how they're completely changing that. And that's a big signal to the industry that things are changing. And if you're not changing, you're going to be among the one in the future, or you're going to be stuck in the past. And so it's kind of like moving by. There's a bit of like sheep replication of behaviors. Like everyone's doing it, so we should be doing it.
Got it. In my mind, I think about the retail industry and even like the food industry. Everybody has a POS, and I'm just trying to think of like really digital processing for everything. And that POS is not just connected to their orders, meaning they can send an order, back to the kitchen or wherever. But the POS is also connected to their inventory management system and also connected to their suppliers, right? So in the case, like, again, in the case where Shwetank's baby is sick, takes it to a doctor, the doctor's already entering information into a computer. Is it too big of a dream to think that there could be some kind of standardized operating system for insurance companies globally for all kinds of claims? Maybe not the biggest ones, because some of them are really complex, but where every doctor is connected to a system, when every time they input this stuff, it just automatically goes into a format that gets sent to an insurer that then gets processed by some artificial intelligence. And if it gets spit out into a claims adjuster's hand, then they can do that. Like, can we not do that thing? And I'll tell you why I think about this. When I was sitting on the trading desk at Goldman Sachs, we implemented something called Fix. This was an industry-wide initiative where every trade had to be in the exact same format and have the exact same fields. And I know it's not one-to-one. I know claims are different and all this other kind of stuff. But there is some basic information that can be automated. And once that happened, we literally were able to do 10, 20, 30 times more business because everybody that sent us a trade came in the same format. Before that, we were getting faxes, handwritten notes, like photocopies of stuff, emails, and it was insane. And that's what it sounds to me like the claims process is like today. Is there a way to make this thing completely digital so you don't have to fill out a form, you just walk out of the doctor, and that process has already started? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, technically, it's, I think, quite doable. The standards exist, all of these interchange stuff exists. It's a little bit of plumbing work to make random clinics connect to everything, but uh, a large part, I mean, technically it's doable. Its question is the juice with the squeeze for um, cross-border claims? Not sure about that fully, but within countries, this large part of this kind of stuff is already on the right track and should be accelerated.
Yeah, you have similar system that already exist. Motors in Singapore, for instance, there's a centralized database. Medical information are all centralized in Dubai, for instance. I think what it requires really is a regulator's move. So the regulator has to say, like, this is the way it's going to be moving forward. And contrary to what you just said, like, claims, they all look the same, right? So every insurer is receiving the same claims from the same providers. So they all have the exact same information. Maybe there's slight changes in the format they capture them, but it's not that drastic. Like, we go from one insurer to the other, capture the same information for the same reason. So, like, standardizing it, not very hard. And you even have like some international coding, like diagnosis codes that everyone is using, and so you have all the foundation for that. The main issue is a conflict of interest between providers and insurers, and so you have a lifelong fight between providers and insurers, and it's medical, it's in motors, it's abuse is the biggest cost driver of inflation, because on one side you have providers trying to make the best of their invoice, and on the other side you have insurers trying to make the best of their invoice. The only thing is, like, it means exact opposite, right?
What the best means for both parties is just different.
Fighting over what this means, and so you have providers that are not willing to share too much information with the insurers because they're afraid they're going to use that against them, and you have the insurers that complain they don't have enough data, and so and that complain that not everything that's being charged is actually legit. And that fight is going forever, and there's bad faith on both sides, very, very likely.
Yeah, I can add another personal story to that. So I was at my dentist where I'm covered by dental insurance, and there's the dentist is like, hey, you're covered, so there's this little procedure that you may or may not need, but you're covered, let's do it. I was like, that's the crux of the problem. It's not really needed, but I'm not in a position to really judge. And now you, as my doctor, are saying, now that you don't have to pay for it, you might as well get it done. That is the crux of the claims process, and at least in the medical field, right? The sort of payer provider divide. And the only way I've seen this resolved is really like Kaiser and some of the other ones where the payer provider the same thing. That has its own set of challenges. So there is no easy resolution across the board. People have tried different things like higher co-payments, etc. But this is one of these things that we're, I think, stuck with.
So that's actually Singapore is announcing that, or just announced it, that co-payments will be added to the Shield insurance, because that's the only way to actually get people accountable for what they're spending. and it doesn't have to be much, but it has to be like whatever you do procedure, you're going to be paying a little part of it, so that you feel the pain, and so that you don't go for like, like, oh, why don't you get a teeth whitening just because it's paid for, and like white teeth, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, a little bit of pain for everybody. Do you think if this gets solved or if it gets resolved and just claims get better, like the one thing I think about is, can you turn it in? And this actually happened again in the financial services industry. Like the whole stock loan, stock borrow business used to just be like a freebie, but they turned into a massive profit center. And I'm wondering if like claims in this way can go from being just this pain in the butt for everybody actually into a profit center, or even just like a source of loyalty for people, where the differentiated way you get a claim paid out, like better from one as it is from another, that can actually lead to brand differentiation.
Yes, and it can go both ways. So the first thing is like, claim is the one source of proprietary data that insurers have that's completely untapped today. It's the way people utilize their product, and today they learn nothing from it. So they're sitting on years of claim that they've been processing, and they've learned absolutely nothing from it. And so it impacts the rest of the organization. If you start stacking up data and you can analyze them efficiently with claims, so first thing you can do is understand the billing patterns of the provider, and so you can stop fraud, waste, and abuse. That's what we're working on. And then you can go much further. You can start helping the product team to design better product, because you know exactly how people are using it, and you can profile the people, and so you can offer a different product to Shwetank and Michael because they have different lifestyle, and because one has a kid and the other one's kids are maybe older, and so you can all of a sudden make much better segmentation and personalization. You can do better pricing because you know how people are spending, and you can even incentivize the pricing based on your usage, right? So if you use your insurance less, you'll have a discount next year, and so on and so forth. And you can help with the P&L, and you can actually feed actuaries with tangible data, and actuaries are the one that do data science with no data, and all of a sudden they could have set of real-time data to understand whether the risk modeling that they've been doing is actually working or needs like tweaking and all that. So it's one thing, and add the underwriting data on top of it, and then you'll have like a fantastic source of information that can be diffused real-time in the rest of the organization. So that's the bright side of it, and that would be the one who mastered that the first will be differentiating, but hopefully everyone's going to go there. And that means much better insurance and potentially cheaper insurance for everyone. Now, the sneaky side of that is, once you start understanding very, very well how people use insurance, and at the underwriting and the claim side, you can start doing segregation that's not very healthy. So if I see some markers in your health behavior, I can start either like kicking you out of the insurance because you're too much of a risk, which defeats the purpose of insurance, where we get everyone and we calculate the risk. And so you can have like deviant behaviors that come from that. CEO of AXA globally is a big ambassadors of like why you should be very, very careful of that, and how insurance should continue to be very inclusive, and like some stuff need to be stopped. Singapore also made like passed a regulation recently saying like, DNA tests cannot be used to in underwriting, especially for certain disease or like genetic markers and stuff like that. Because if you start doing that, then that means like you were born unlucky with something you're not responsible, then you're going to pay a very expensive insurance the rest of your life, which is not fair.
But DNA is already used, right? You take family history. It's a proxy, but it's a very close proxy. But this is a valid point. Look, you're going from that combination and law of large numbers to individualized pricing, which then defeats. So too much personalization defeats insurance altogether.
Yeah, completely agreed. I want to have a slight technical conversation with you guys, just because I've been talking to people about digital identity. And as you know, I do a whole show in India called India Game Changers. So a lot of the people are talking about the digital identity in India. I know there's digital identity in Singapore as well. But also these new like Pay Now in Singapore and UPI in India. I'm just curious like where those things fit into the insurance technology stack, where you can digitally identify somebody, but you can also make this kind of frictionless payment to them in a way that wasn't necessarily possible before. Like where do those things come into play? And then I'll let you guys go.
I mean, so I think digital identities. So I live across 3 countries: India, Singapore, and Finland, and it's fascinating to see how the digital identities sort of differ. So, I mean, Singapore and India have really converged. So SingPass and Aadhaar, I think, are very similar and very easy to use, and super easy to authenticate. In Finland, I have to authenticate through my bank. And if I, for whatever reason, for a long time, I didn't have a bank account, so I had to go to the police and get a USB card, which I had to plug into a USB card reader to authenticate for a good year. So
Your
I
identity.
think, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow,
my
interesting.
identity
Go ahead.
to be able to be able to to be able to buy insurance, for instance, because insurance is mandatory across all three countries. In Singapore, I scan the SingPass app, SingPass QR code. I'm authenticated and the policy is issued. In India, I input my Aadhaar number, I get an OTP, policy issued. In Finland, if I don't have a bank account for whatever reason, or my bank is a joint account, etc., uh, I have to. There's no way to digitally authenticate. So either it's in person, or you have to have this USB card issued by the police, etc. Supremely crisp. So at the highest level, a simple ID system makes it easy to issue policies, right? You know who you are, and you can sort of make that whole process digital end to end without any uh, analog intervention. The the payment system, etc. I think uh, uh, these are not game changers in my opinion. I think they historically insurance companies had good ways to make payments to you. Now they're faster and perhaps a bit cheaper, but I don't think they make a huge difference to the claims process or the sales process, but the ID system certainly does.
The digital identity is the interesting one, right? Because it impacts the ability of people to fraud. Once you know your identity is captured, and it's kind of like the same idea as the credit history, right? Like if you get a history on your identity of like what you've been doing, and if you've been doing something wrong, and that can be shared with other insurers, then that means no one becomes a fraudster anymore because they're afraid of like never being insured anymore, which is a good thing in my opinion. But it's also like Shwetank was talking about SingPass, right? So you have a digital identity, you can log in and you can authorize a third party to actually retrieve your data. And if you do that with your insurance, that means like whenever you submit a claim, instead of like, we were talking about claims form, all of a sudden, most of your information on the claims form can be filled without any mistakes, and it's instant, and that's good. And then what's already happening, you link your bank account or your digital payment, that's good. I think where it's even more interesting is all that trend about embedded insurance, where you have micro insurance on a lot of moments in life, whether it's buying something online on an e-commerce platform, whether it's a ride that you take with Uber or Grab, and you want to be insured, and like all those little moments where you're insured for like you pay $2 or $5, and your claim might be like $30 or $50, where having someone to actually look into doesn't really make sense. So if you can have your digital identity linked to that, and payment automated whenever there's parametric system that decide whether you should be paid or not, then all of a sudden it makes insurance much more broad, and you can insure a lot more. And so that's a big opportunity for the insurance industry.
Okay, guys, I will let you go. Thank you so much for doing this. I hope you guys keep coming back. These conversations are really great, and I always learn something. You two are really, really good at this. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
Shwetank.